Hey there, and welcome. Today we're jumping into a really critical topic in workplace safety. How do we handle extremely hazardous chemicals in a way that keeps everyone safe? We're going to unpack OSHA's big regulation on this, which is called the Process Safety Management Standard, or PSM for short.
It's a pretty serious question to ask. When you're working with incredibly powerful substances, the difference between a totally normal day and a complete disaster can be razor thin. So what's standing in the gap? Well, the answer is a really solid, proactive safety system.
And this right here, this is exactly what we're trying to prevent. See, a catastrophic release isn't just a small leak. We're talking about a massive, uncontrolled event. Think a huge fire, an explosion, or a toxic chemical cloud that creates an immediate, severe danger for everyone at the facility. This is the absolute worst-case scenario that this whole regulation is built to avoid. So, to really get a handle on this, we're going to walk through 5 key parts. First, we'll talk about why this is all so important. Then, we'll figure out if these rules even apply to you. After that, we'll break down the core of a safety program, look at how it deals with changes and incidents, and finally, wrap up with how to stay safe and compliant.
Okay, so the entire philosophy behind this OSHA standard is about a fundamental shift in thinking. Instead of just reacting and cleaning up after an accident happens, the real goal is to build a system that can actually anticipate and prevent those accidents from happening in the first place. It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
So, where do you even start with all this? Well, the very first practical step is to figure out if your business actually needs to follow this specific set of rules. And it really just boils down to 2 main questions about what you've got on site.
It's actually pretty straightforward. First, OSHA keeps a specific list of over 130 highly hazardous chemicals. If you have one of those on site and it's over a certain amount or threshold, then boom, the rule applies. Second, even if you don't have a chemical from that list, if you have 10,000 pounds or more of a flammable liquid or gas all in one location or process, the rule applies to you too. If you answer yes to either of those, you're gonna need a PSM program.
All right, so let's say the standard does apply to you. What's next? Well, now you've got to build out what I like to call your safety playbook. And this isn't just one document you stick in a drawer, it's a whole comprehensive program made up of 14 key elements that OSHA requires. Now, I know what you're thinking. 14 elements sounds like a lot, and it can feel a little overwhelming, but a really helpful way to think about it is to group them into 3 simple pillars. First, know your risks. Second, control your process. And third, empower your people. So this first pillar, know your risks, is really the foundation for everything else. It all starts with gathering every piece of technical info you can on your chemicals, your equipment, and your technology. Then, you use all that data to conduct what's called a process hazard analysis, or a PHA. This is where a team sits down and systematically asks, what could possibly go wrong here? And if it does, how bad could it be? And this is not a one-and-done thing. You have to formally revisit and update that analysis at least every 5 years. The second pillar, control your process, is all about turning that knowledge into action, the day-to-day stuff. This means you need to have crystal clear written instructions for how to operate everything safely. It means having a solid program to make sure all your equipment, your pipes, your tanks, your safety systems is inspected and maintained properly. It also means doing a formal safety check before you start up any new or modified process. And it means requiring a special permit for any kind of hot work, like welding or grinding, that could be an ignition source. And finally, we have empower your people. And honestly, this is so crucial because a plan on paper is pretty much useless without the people who make it happen. The regulation actually requires employers to get their employees involved in creating and developing the safety program. Everyone needs training when they start, plus refresher training at least every 3 years. And this doesn't just apply to your own employees, it extends to outside contractors too. They have to be trained and follow your safety rules while they're on your site. You know, a great safety plan can't just be created once and then left on a shelf to collect dust. Things are always changing at a facility. You have planned updates, but you also have unexpected stuff that happens. The PSM standard gets this, and it requires your program to be a living, breathing document that can adapt to both. And this whole living document idea really comes to life in 2 key areas. For any planned changes, like switching to a new chemical or installing a different piece of equipment, you have to use a formal management of change process. This means you review all the safety implications before you make the change. And that's not just red tape. A shocking number of major industrial accidents started with what seemed like a minor undocumented tweak. Then, on the flip side, for unplanned stuff, you have to launch an incident investigation for any accident or even a near miss that could have led to a catastrophe. And that investigation has to kick off within 48 hours so you can find the root cause and make sure it never, ever happens again. Okay, so you've built your program and you've got systems to handle change. The last piece of the puzzle is all about verification. How do you actually know if your plan is working? Are people really following it? Well, the regulation has requirements for that too. So the crucial number to remember here is this one. At least once every 3 years, your company has to conduct a complete top-to-bottom compliance audit. This is a formal checkup to verify that every single part of your PSM program is not only in place, but that it's actually working and being followed by everybody. Now, beyond those big 3-year audits, you also need a detailed, written emergency action plan for the whole site. And you have to keep meticulous records of everything: your hazard analyses, your incident reports, your audits. The consequences for dropping the ball here are really serious. They can range from huge fines and corrective orders from OSHA to, most importantly, a massively increased risk of having a real disaster on your hands. And that kind of brings us full circle, doesn't it? Every one of those 14 elements, all the audits, all the procedures, they all serve this one core purpose, stated right there by OSHA itself, to prevent dangerous chemicals from getting out of the pipes and tanks where they belong. So, the final question I want to leave you with is this. In your workplace, is the safety plan a living, breathing part of the daily culture? Or is it just a dusty binder sitting on a shelf that nobody ever looks at? Because really, the answer to that question could be the difference between a safe workplace and a catastrophe just waiting to happen.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.